Man of Vision. As soon as he returned from the funeral of slain President William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt took up residence in the White House. His wife Edith went to Sagamore Hill, their home on Long Island, to make preparations for moving the family to Washington, D.C. That first day in the White House must have seemed lonely to Teddy, accustomed as he was to the activities of his lively brood, Alice, Ted, Kermit, Ethel, Archie, and Quentin. And so when evening arrived, he invited his two sisters, Bammy and Connie, and their husbands, Commander William Cowles and Douglas Robinson, to join him for dinner.
All this must seem very strange, Teddy. President of the United States and dining in the White House? Although I must say I'm not truly surprised.
Nor am I, Bammy. Even as children, we knew our brother was marked for greatness. He is practically the reincarnation of our father.
It's true, you know, Teddy. Even before Connie and I were married, she always spoke of you in the most glowing terms. Her devotion to you...
And Bammy's.
Yes, William, and Bammy's is extraordinary.
I've been very blessed by the love of my family. And dear sisters, I'm sure you know what a special day this is.
You mean other than it being your first day in the White House?
Today, December 23rd, is Father's birthday.
That's right. It would have been his 70th.
I feel it is a good omen that I begin my duties in this house on this day.
You know, Teddy, you're going to meet some stern challenges, not the least of which will be coming from the Republican Party and the business community. They will need to know that you will continue McKinley's conservative policies.
I agree with Douglas. That would take a great weight off their minds. Mark Hanna is nearly apoplectic with worry.
I have no intention of causing an uproar. George Cortelyou, McKinley's secretary, will stay on, as well as most of McKinley's cabinet. John Hay will still be Secretary of State. Very fitting, since, as you know, he was one of Lincoln's personal secretaries.
And a great friend of Father's.
Yes, I must say, all day long I have felt Father's presence as I signed various papers. It is a blessing to feel his hand on my shoulder as I take up the duties of the presidency.
As soon as Edith and the children arrived at the White House, it became a much more lively place. The dark, stuffy rooms gave way to Edith's efforts to brighten them and restore the mansion to its former grandeur. Eventually, the children felt more at home, and the younger ones were delighted to race each other in the long hallways or slide down the staircases on metal trays from the kitchen.
Gotcha, Ethel.
Teddy, however, immediately embarked on learning as much as possible about his duties in the shortest possible time. One of those duties was preparing to appoint people to federal positions throughout the country. And for advice on this task, he invited a famous person to the White House for dinner.
I asked you to join us, Mr. Washington.
Booker, please, Mr. President.
Booker, then, because I have the utmost respect for you and what you've accomplished at the Tuskegee Institute.
Thank you very much.
I know you are acquainted with a great number of worthy individuals in the South, both black and white, and I seek your help as I must make appointments to fill federal positions as they become available throughout the southern states. I have both southern and northern roots, you know, and I want to see the South reemerge in importance.
More tea, Mr. President?
Yes, thank you. And some for our guest?
Yes, please.
Anyway, Mr. Washington, Booker, I am not so interested in party lines as I am in finding trustworthy individuals. I value your opinion and your advice.
Do you mean, Mr. President, that you would appoint a Democrat to fill a federal position?
Yes, if he is the most qualified. I propose to find men of honor, both black and white, Republican, Democrat, whatever. It's a man's character that is the truest test. And I not only intend to appoint blacks of distinction in the South, but in the North as well.
Booker T. Washington had been a former slave, but now he was the most influential black person in the country. Teddy Roosevelt believed that Booker's achievements should be recognized and honored, but not everyone agreed, and many were outraged. Newspapers spilled forth with venom, as did many citizens.
Lucy, listen to this. Right here in the Memphis Scimitar. It is only very recently that President Roosevelt boasted that his mother was a Southern woman, and that he is half Southern by reason of that fact.
Yes, but by inviting that man to his table, he has insulted his mother's name.
Well, that is exactly what it says here, and it goes on. No Southern woman with proper self-respect would now accept an invitation to the White House. He has not inflamed the anger of the Southern people. He has excited their disgust.
Other newspapers carried articles saying that the smell was so bad in Washington that even the rats had left town. Teddy Roosevelt was dumbfounded by the reaction.
I tell you, Edith, I don't understand it. Even moderate papers assert that the affection with which the South previously held me is now evaporated.
It seems, my dear, that your views on honoring the individual, regardless of his color or background, are not universally shared. You are a man ahead of your time. I've always known that.
Yes, well, I sent a private note to Booker to tell him that I don't care what people think. He wrote back to say that he thinks the upset will pass in time. But regardless, between you and me, I am resolved to meet with him whenever the occasion calls for it.
Throughout the years of Teddy Roosevelt's presidency, he presented many firsts to the country besides being the first to invite an African-American man to dinner at the White House. He was the first president who had been born and raised in a big city, the first to ride in an automobile, the first to fly in an airplane, the first to dive in a submarine, and the first as president to travel outside of the country. In addition, before ascending to the presidency, Teddy had mastered several foreign languages, had read several thousand books, and eventually wrote a total of 15 of his own. Even while in office, he usually read a book a day, often studying into the night, all of which gave him a wonderful grasp of history and a vision of the future role which he felt should be fulfilled by the United States. That led him, among other things, to build up the nation's military capabilities. In addition, his lifelong interest in nature never left him, and he increased the lands dedicated to national forests by millions of acres, established 16 national monuments, including the Grand Canyon, and set aside 5 national parks. A complete list of Teddy Roosevelt's accomplishments, both personally and as president, would be lengthy indeed. However, there are a few items that made such a national impact that they should be recognized. The first was Teddy's response to the uproar caused when J.P. Morgan and other business magnates consolidated several Western railroads into one huge company.
I tell you, Cortelyou, this new brainchild of J.P. Morgan's, the Northern Securities Company, is a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. I need to get the Attorney General on this right away, and the Justice Department.
Yes, sir.
We need to issue a bulletin. Get ready for dictation.
I'm ready, sir.
I will not let Morgan or his cohorts swindle the public and amass money for themselves while the common man pays for it. Lower wages, higher fares, it's outrageous.
Well, gentlemen, we timed it perfectly.
Yes, JP, that we did. By waiting until after the stock market had already closed to make our announcement, we were able to have things in place by the next morning. New stock issued for the Northern Securities Company, everything consolidated.
Even Mark Hanna, I hear, was around begging to have stock saved for himself.
So I heard.
Sir, an urgent phone call for you.
Gentlemen, I'll be right back. That call was from a newspaperman.
What is it? You look...
Roosevelt has sent the Justice Department down our throats. They're proceeding against Northern Securities for violating the Sherman Antitrust Act. Gentlemen, we are being taken to court, and we will fight.
And fight they did. But the courts upheld Teddy's stance on the Northern Securities Company. Teddy's reputation as a trustbuster was born, and the common people loved him for it. Shortly, however, another situation arose which would require the most careful handling by the president.
Come on, Papa, please. Just one more ghost story before we go to bed. Please?
Now, Archie. And you too, Quentin. Your father has much work to do before he can go to bed himself, so...
Then tell us about the children who work in the coal mines.
Well, Mother, what do you think? Can the bunnies stay up a little longer?
Well...
Yay!
All right, then. Quentin, you come here and sit on my lap.
Oh, boy!
You see, children, right now, there is a strike going on in the mines in Pennsylvania. The miners there work long, terrible, exhausting hours, 6 days a week, and for very little money. And even children your age, Archie, boys 8 or 9 years old, are put to work picking over the coal until their little hands are cut and scarred black forever.
Really? That's awful.
You're right, Ethel, my girl. It is awful. And life doesn't get better. The mine owners pay very little, and they take all the miners' living expenses out of what they do pay them, so in the end, the miners always end up owing the company. They can never get ahead. Not only that, but the miners breathe coal dust every day, so before the miners are very old, they are already very sick with black lung disease.
Is that why the miners are striking?
Yes, but the owners aren't budging. They say they won't pay more, and the miners say they won't go back to work unless changes are made for the better.
But, Papa, it's already getting cold outside. If people don't have coal to heat their houses, well, what then?
That is exactly the problem, Archie.
Why don't you just make the mine owners be nice?
Because the president doesn't have the power to interfere in his strike, Quentin, unless the welfare of the nation is at stake. But since winter is approaching, and because of the strike, the cost of coal has skyrocketed so high that ordinary people can't afford it, well, families all across the country will be freezing to death. Things have finally reached the breaking point. The welfare of the country is at stake now.
You've taken action then, dearest?
Well, I've threatened to send in federal troops to work the mines if the owners won't work out a solution. They are resisting, of course, arguing about who will represent them at the meetings, resisting one negotiator because he represents labor.
And labor means he represents the miners?
Yes, Ethel, that's right. Finally, I realized that they were resisting not because of who he was, but because of what he represented. So instead of saying he was Tweedledum of labor, I said he was Tweedledee, an eminent psychologist.
His name is Twiddly-Dee?
No, my boy. I just meant that I put another label on him, and that instantly solved the problem.
Thanks to Teddy's intervention in the anthracite coal strike of 1902, the dispute was solved peaceably. The miners won shorter workdays and a hike in wages, and the country was spared a disastrous winter because of a coal shortage. Teddy's goal, he said, was to negotiate a square deal for both sides, and that term, a square deal, was echoed by the public to describe his entire administration. The citizens of the United States soon learned that Teddy was a man with ideas of his own and with the energy to see them through. Some feared that the former Rough Rider would lead the nation into war. But while Teddy firmly believed that the United States should take its rightful place in the world, he also believed that it had a responsibility to other nations to set an example for good. And he felt that the country's security lay in being so strong that it would actually prevent the possibility of war. He became famous for statements of that belief.
I have always been fond of the West African proverb, "Speak softly and carry a big stick. You will go far."
Teddy's aim was to protect the United States. In fact, the entire Western Hemisphere from those who might threaten the security of these nations, and he became known for his masterful statesmanship, not only at home, but abroad. And in fact, he became the first president to receive a Nobel Peace Prize when he successfully helped negotiate an end to the Russo-Japanese War. However, if one had to choose a single accomplishment from the many for which Teddy was known, the one action which defined his vision, it would no doubt be the building of the Panama Canal.
The Secretary of State, John Hay, to see you, Mr. President.
Ah, show him in, please. John, there you are. Thanks for coming. Have a seat.
Thank you, Mr. President. I assume you're interested in the latest developments?
Oh, yes.
Well, as you know, Colombia has been spooked by reports that Panama will secede from Colombian domination and make their own treaty with the United States regarding the canal.
It seems now that Colombia is not so eager to lose our offer. $10 million in gold and $250,000 annually.
Yes, well, at the very least, Colombia is now clamoring to re-enter negotiations with us.
Well, the press here at home is already suggesting that we just take Panama from them. And I confess, I'm eager to make dirt fly on the project before the upcoming elections. But even more importantly, we need that canal in place as soon as possible so that our ships can quickly pass between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans.
I understand completely. A canal between the oceans will cut many weeks off the trip around the tip of South America.
Indeed. Our national security, and the security of the entire Caribbean, in fact, depends on it.
I think, Mr. President, there will be no need for force. Word has it that a revolt is already underway. The Panamanians are quite eager to be free of Colombia.
Yes. Well, Felipe Benavides has already been to see me. I did not encourage him to seek revolt, but I didn't exactly discourage him either.
I happen to know that he is working towards that end even as we speak.
Well, he and Cromwell have certainly been campaigning for the canal to run across Panama rather than by the route across Nicaragua. They had a lot of money riding on the success of the French attempt to build the canal there.
Let's just say that Benavides has funds, and he's in New York right now orchestrating a Panamanian takeover.
Well, if he succeeds, I can assure you that our government will lose no time in recognizing the new government of Panama.
On November 4th, 1903, Panama declared its independence from Colombia. President Roosevelt immediately recognized the new republic and signed a treaty which gave the United States control over the strip of land where the canal was to be built and over the canal itself. Within months, the project, which would become the most difficult and ambitious engineering feat ever attempted, would be underway. The following November, Teddy Roosevelt won the election, and in 1906 he prepared to travel to Panama so that he could survey progress on the canal with his own eyes.
Now, children, you be good bunnies while we're away. We're sailing down to Panama on the Louisiana, a big battleship. We'll be back before you know it.
But isn't it dangerous? I mean, aren't people dying there from all kinds of bad diseases?
We're going to be just fine. You'll see.
But you're right, Ethel. There were many tropical diseases that were plaguing the workers. Panama has very hot, steamy weather, and the mosquitoes there carry malaria and yellow fever, among other things. Thousands of workers died. But Dr. Gorgas has done a masterful job, just like he did in Cuba. And his actions of combating the breeding places for mosquitoes have been highly successful.
Besides, while we're there, we'll be protected by mosquito netting.
And I'll make sure your mother is positively swathed with mosquito netting.
Once Teddy was in the canal zone, he was fired with unquenchable zeal for the enormity of the project and the progress being made. He wanted to see everything, even though torrential rains poured upon him for the entire 3 days of his visit. He paid no mind, however. In his white suit and wide-brimmed hat, he splashed through churning streams, mud, and work camps. He scrambled up the sides of the cut to get a better view, and he continually halted the train which took him and Edith along the excavated passageway. Off he would hop to ask a worker about conditions, to inquire about details, to offer words of encouragement, and to make quick speeches to laborers.
You are doing the biggest thing of the kind that has ever been done. And I've come because I want to see how you're doing it.
Back on the train, he continually peppered John Stevens, who at that time was commander of the project, with pointed questions about every aspect of construction.
How many workers did you say are on the project, John?
Around 50,000, Mr. President. Only about 10% are Americans from back home. Most of the workers come from the West Indies.
And the conditions for the workers?
Better all the time, sir. Disease is down, although pneumonia takes its toll. We supply the housing. Many of the workers have it better here than at home.
I see this maze of train tracks on the floor of the excavation. It looks to me like the train system forms a virtual conveyor belt for the debris that you're clearing.
Exactly right, sir. First we blast the rock, and then the big steam shovels come in and load the broken rock onto the train cars. We keep building the tracks farther and farther along as we make progress inland.
Excellent. Is that one of the steam shovels there?
Yes, that's a 95-ton Bucyrus.
Stop the train. I have to see this.
The president, unmindful of the deep mud and hammering rain, sloshed his way to the steam shovel and spent 20 delightful minutes at the controls. The operator filled him in on how to move the great arm and bucket.
At full capacity, Mr. President, this shovel can dig nearly 5 times as much as the ones the French were using before they had to abandon the project.
Excellent.
And this scoop can move about 8 tons of rock and dirt in a single pass.
Utterly amazing. Amazing!
Next, Teddy hopped back aboard the train, where Edith awaited him, and the trip continued.
So, John, even though this canal will be only half as long as the Suez Canal, you'll be removing far more material by comparison, correct?
Yes, the Suez Canal is a sea-level canal, and it was dug through sandy soil and relatively low flat land. But here, we have to go through nearly 50 miles of jungle, as well as the mountainous Continental Divide, a high ridge of hard, solid rock. To dig it down to sea level would be all but impossible.
Then this canal system will be able to actually lift the ships up and over the mountains. What a concept!
Yes, we're building a series of locks on each side of the divide. Each lock will have a water level higher than the last as they go inland, and the locks will be connected by man-made lakes. So ships will actually sail over the Continental Divide and then be lowered back down to the ocean level on the other side. The Panama Canal will basically be a water elevator.
By George, what a plan. Bully, John, just bully.
Teddy Roosevelt viewed the construction of the Panama Canal as one of the most important contributions of his presidency. The canal was finished in 1914, after he had already left office, but it would never have been built without his foresight and determination. He brought new energy and new vigor to the role of the presidency, and in everything he did, he tried to live in such a way that his own father would have approved. He understood, as few did in his day, what a pivotal role the United States would play in the future. And while he built the military capabilities of the nation, and was not afraid if necessary to go to war to defend the right, his 7 years in the White House were among the most peaceful in American history. Theodore Roosevelt stands shoulder to shoulder with the great men of history, a man who began his life as a weak and sickly child, yet overcame every challenge by sheer power of the will and a never-wavering belief in God, in family, and in loyalty to country.